Welcome, friends, to Friends. This is Friends number 2. In everyone's life, at some time, our inner fire goes out. It then bursts into flame by an encounter with another human being. We should be thankful for the people who rekindle the inner spirit. I want to talk about Jesus. Now, it's interesting because when we connect friends with the name Jesus, perhaps our mind goes back to that old hymn, "What a friend we have in Jesus." So we're used to or accustomed to thinking in terms of Jesus as my friend. But do you realize that when Jesus was here, he would have sung that differently? He would have said, "What a friend I have with Peter, James, and John." And I'm going to show you today how that Jesus had personal friends. So let's start, first of all, with Peter, James, and John. The Bible sets apart Peter, James, and John from the other group of 12 disciples, the other group of 9 disciples. The book of Mark, which of course was written by John Mark, but scholars tell us that Mark was written from Peter's perspective. So Peter, James, and John, they end up together in a cluster group, and it seems that Jesus was closer to these 3 than the other ones. We also know from the Gospel of John that John was indeed the closest to Jesus. So let's go to the book of Mark. Let's go to chapter 5. In chapter 5, verses 12 to 14, Jesus has crossed over the lake and has landed. When he's landed, Jairus, a leader of the synagogue, came and said, Jesus, come to my house. My daughter is at the point of death. Please come. And he begged him earnestly. She's lying at the point of death. Please come. And so Jesus goes. On the way, you'll no doubt remember, a woman is healed with an issue of blood. But now they get to the ruler of the synagogue's home, and we read in verse number 37 that Jesus permitted no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John. Now, I'm finding that peculiar. Lucky for me, because I'm there, I find it peculiar that Jesus is drawing a line in the sand, and he said, I want Peter, James, and John with me, and you people, you just chat to other people, because I'm taking these 3 with me. I find that interesting. Mount of Transfiguration, chapter 9 of Mark, verse number 2. Now, after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John and led them up a high mountain to be by themselves, and he's transfigured before them. And again, I'm asking the question, tough luck for Andrew, tough luck for the other James, tough luck for Matthew, tough luck for the other 9, because Jesus is taking Peter, James, and John. Garden of Gethsemane, Mark chapter 14, 32 to 34. Jesus, it says in the text that his soul is exceedingly sorrowful. So this is a powerful moment in Jesus' life. The New Living Translation translates this: Jesus is deeply troubled and he's distressed. And Jesus turns to Peter, James, and John And he looks at them, he says, boys, come, please stay with me and watch with me. It's a great moment in this text for us. It's a great moment. Jesus, he's so overwhelmed with what's going to happen to him, he wants his three best buddies with him, because it seems now that these guys are very close to Jesus. They are in Jesus, let's say they're in Jesus' inner core group. And Jesus said, come on, boys, please stay here with me. The other 9, they're over there. They're already conked out. It's late at night. They're sleeping. But you boys, please stay with me. My soul is deeply troubled. I'm in distress. Please come and stay with me. You know the story. They fell asleep. They fell asleep. But I'm fascinated by the way the scriptures speak of Jesus' relationships. So I want you to look at this diagram with me that we have here. And what I've done with this diagram is I want us to kind of focus in on the circles of Jesus' friendships. So right in the center, you can see what I put there is life with the Father. So the Father is very, very powerful to Jesus. We know that he's constantly rising earlier than everybody else. He's going out somewhere by himself so that he can be with the Father. So at the center of his friendship relationships, I put the inner circle would be life of the Father. But then I put Peter, James, and John outside of that next circle after life of the Father. I put Peter, James, and John. Those 3 boys were the closest to him. Those were his closest friends. Outside of that, I put the next circle, the 12, actually 9, because we've already counted the 3. We have 9. We might want to remove Judas for obvious reasons. And outside of that, I put Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. We know from John chapter 10, when Lazarus has died, Jesus, he goes to Bethany to see them, and Martha says, Jesus, your friend. So I put them in the next circle. The circle after that, I put the 70. So you perhaps remember in the book of Luke, Jesus sends out the 12, and then he sends out the 70. So these 70 people were closer to him. And then I put the needy. It seems that the needy people had pretty close access to Jesus. And then I put the crowds. Now, interestingly enough, I think when we think of Jesus and friends, we think of, well, everybody was the friend of Jesus. Everybody liked Jesus. Everybody was with Jesus. Well, actually, no, that's not true. The crowds I placed on the 7th circle away from Jesus. Now, obviously, Jesus was available to all the people most of the time, but not all the time. There was times we get this idea from Scripture when Jesus would come away with his 12. And we know from the text we've already looked at, he would take even the 3 closer to him. So it's evident that there were people that were closer to Jesus than others. Now, I find that fascinating because that tells us something very, very important. And we're going to unfold this for you in the next lesson. There are people in your life that need to be placed in one of these circles. Not everybody is your friend, but somebody needs to be next to you. And there are various individuals that you put in various circles around your life. If Jesus did it, then I think it's important that we do it. Why did Jesus do that? Well, I think Jesus did that to help us understand as we develop friendships and relationships, not everybody needs to be your best friend. Not everybody needs to be your best friend. Now, I think this is true. The closer the connection to Jesus for Peter, James, and John, the deeper the possibilities of intimacy. There's this great moment in the Last Supper where Jesus kind of lets the cat out of the bag and says that he is going to be betrayed. So John is encouraged, said, "Hey, John, find out who's the dirty rat among us." And the Bible tells us that John kind of almost snuggled up to his friend Jesus, laid his head kind of on his shoulder and said, "Jesus, psst, who's going to betray you?" And Jesus actually told him, and I think you know the story. So I think John, it appears when Jesus was here, John is closest to Jesus. He's even closer than the three, James, John, and Peter, James, and John. A few more things that we're going to figure out. We have seen that Jesus had friends. Last time we were together, we found out Hushai, his great claim to fame. Hey, here is Hushai, the king's friend. So what we're going to do as we move forward is I'm going to help you see and understand different levels of friends that we have and different kinds of friends that we have. And then we're going to spend some time on why we need friends and how we need to be a friend. So we'll see you next time on Friends.